Hey, thank you for joining this episode of The Local Loop. The Local Loop is an online conversation with community leaders as they work through the difficulties of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we're also using this time to keep you in the loop, those of you watching with us, to what's going on and what resources are available. Each episode, myself and Bryan, the lead pastor of Oak Ridge Church, host local community and business leaders to see how they're navigating through this time and also what you need to know. And today I'm excited to have a friend, Chris Davis, the president of Farmers Bank. Hi, Chris.
Good morning. How are you? It seems like afternoon. It's been such a long day already, but good morning. Glad to be here.
What day is it even anyway through all this, right?
I don't even know. No, they're all the same somewhat now.
Well, Chris, thank you for joining us. Well, if you would, just for our viewers, tell us a little bit about the history of Farmers Bank and how you became president of Farmers Bank.
Well, as you probably know, Bryan, this is my second career choice. The bank has been here for 95 years. We're celebrating our 95th anniversary now. I'm a third generation. My grandfather came here in the 30s. My dad came here in the 60s. I practiced law for about 20 years in Salisbury and came here about 18 years ago to be president. And frankly, the only reason I did it was not just the family connection, but because it's a community bank. It serves the community. I know you got other issues to go through this morning, but my very first text message was from a director this morning for a donation to a program in Worcester County in Ocean City, trying to feed some families that just have nowhere to turn right now. So it's one thing that community banks do, and it's another mission more than just a financial mission, and that's one of the things that is most gratifying about being at a community bank. So we love it. Like I said, we've been here. We serve now Wycomico, Worcester, and Sussex counties. We have a new branch in Millsboro. It's not so new now, a couple of years old, but we're a true community bank. Been around for 95 years, and that's why I made the career choice to move from the practice of law, and I've never regretted it since.
Well, it's I've had the opportunity to know you since you started here, and it's been a pleasure. And you embody, I think, what the president of a community bank is. I mean, just being here with us today shows how much you're community-minded and open and relatable and easy access to people. And I think that's what makes Farmers Bank such a unique bank. And I know my family and I have had the pleasure of dealing with Farmers Bank for over 20 years. Tell us a little bit what this has been like. Because I went through it with you during the financial crash in 2008, although me and you would say it probably started in 2005, but you went through that. Now you're dealing with this. What's it like going through this pandemic? Is it similar? Do you think the outcome's going to be the same financially, or what's your pulse and take on that?
You're about the 100th person that's asked me that same question, even with some of the local TV media. This is a very different situation because it was like the flipping of a light switch. The economy was going very well. Our customers were doing well. Our delinquency rates were very low. People were just doing very well on Delmarva. So it really is very different than the first time. But what we began about 8 weeks ago, we have a plan, and I think a lot of businesses don't think about it, but banks have to have it. We have basically an emergency plan that we put into place a long time ago. And so you kind of pull that off the shelf, you bring your emergency team together, and there's two aspects to really what every business should be doing. The first is you have to make sure that your staff is safe and your customers are safe. And when you have a pandemic or any other kind of natural disaster, that's number one, is people's health and safety. Then the second prong of that test really is what I'll call the economic health of your customers. So we immediately began a two-pronged approach to the crisis. We put into place a program where if things progressed, we would go down to half staff, which we did, closing our lobbies, which we did, but still keeping it going. And one of the things I said to my staff at that meeting, I said, we're not on the front line like the healthcare workers are in the ER at PRMC and the other local hospitals. God bless all of them. But we are on the economic front line. We really are. We realized that we had a duty and a responsibility socially and morally and ethically to keep our customers where they needed to be. So we began reaching out before the bank ever was shut down more. We began reaching out to our customers who had loan relationships with us saying, look, we think there's a big storm brewing. Are you prepared? And in terms of a child story, it's, did you build your house out of bricks, your financial house out of bricks or straw? And so some people built their house out of bricks and some don't. So we began a program of reaching out to our customers. Back then, it worked out great, because some people said, well, I don't know, and I may need some accommodations. So we immediately implemented what I'll call an accommodations program. You know, some of it was interest only on a loan, some of it was interest only with a readvance, some of it was a complete deferral for 3 months. We did a 90-day program not knowing how long this would last. So the other thing we did, or I did, was I got in contact with the other bankers on Delmarva. Every one of them. You know, we all got together by different phone calls. I also got involved with Mayor Jake and Dave Ryan at SWED on the local coronavirus task force group that was meeting on Tuesdays. So yeah, that's in a nutshell, that's how that was the transition. As far as it being different from the last time, the problem with this is no one knows when it's going to end or how it's going to end. So, you know, about a month ago, we began our reopening part of our committee. You know, what's the world going to look like when this comes back? And what are our customers' needs going to be? You know, so we immediately began participating, even though it was very difficult, it's still difficult, in the payroll protection program. That loan program, to give you an idea, we pushed out in the first phase of this about $15 million of loans in just a couple days. And all of those loans, and that's more than we would typically do in 3 months, we did honestly in a 3-day period of time.
Wow.
So we had people literally working nearly around the clock, very late at night. I had to assemble my team because we really felt like that whole program was designed for an 8-week payroll injection for the businesses that were forced to close. So through no fault of their own, a business is closed, whether it's particularly the restaurants, you know, no sit down. They had to, if they could revert to carry out. But the retail people, you know, they were just out of luck. You know, if you were selling clothing, that wasn't an essential business, so they just closed it down. So we had to come up with a program ourselves and through the PPP. So the combination of the two has proven successful at this point. It just depends on how much longer this will last. So this was not a self-made issue that happened in 2007, 8, 9, and 10. This was something that came about through no fault of their own. And so I think banks have been given a lot more leeway with their regulators. We're all very heavily regulated because the money we lend is not ours. It's our depositors. So naturally, we are trustees of that money. It's not our money. People think of the bank as it's the bank's money. It's not the bank's money. It's the depositor's money. So we've been entrusted with those funds, so we have to use them wisely. And so we accept the role of regulators. But one of the things that's happened for the first time in the history of banking, I'm talking Great Depression, everything, was there was a joint statement issued by all 5 government regulators for the bank so that we could have a, for lack of a better way to say it, a less restrictive environment where we were encouraged to work with our customers a lot more. So I don't know if that answers your question. It's probably too long an answer, but that's what it is.
Great. No, it's great. Thank you.
So out of curiosity, not understanding the full framework of how all this works. So we know that the government, you know, said, okay, we're going to do this payroll protection and help small businesses in this season. But then those were actually loans. And my curiosity immediately goes to the sense of a lot of these businesses will never, ever recoup any of these monies. So how are they going to pay back? And what do you do when they don't pay any of this back? Who ends up holding that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good question. And you almost have to watch, you know, one of the business programs or read Bloomberg News or something to figure out how the program was set up. But basically, there's a forgiveness feature. And the forgiveness feature is if you meet certain criteria. One is you have to use and I'm not, this is not an exhaustive list, but the basic idea was you have to use 75% of that loan for payroll. In other words, you have to pay it out to your staff members. You're allowed to use the other roughly 25% for rent, mortgage payments, and utilities. If you do that, if you meet those criteria, the Small Business Administration is going to forgive that loan. And it's forgiven once you prove. We don't even know how that's all going to work. This is kind of going forth in faith on it. But once you show that you have met the criteria set forth under the program, the loan will be forgiven. But what had to happen in this program was the banks had to lend out their own money. This wasn't a government check. We have received $0 from the government, not one penny. Every dime we've lent out is our own money. And the other local banks, some local banks chose not to participate in this. Some did. Some local banks subcontracted it out. That didn't go so well. There's several of us, there's about 3 of us that in the lower shore that decided to go full bore and do it ourselves, and we were one of those banks. But so we had to literally come up with $15 million and to lend out. And the idea was, once those, and it's at 1% interest initially, but once the borrower proves that they meet the criteria established by SBA for loan forgiveness, there won't be any payback. Then we got to figure out how we get our money from the SBA. And other than the fact they've assured us that it'll happen, it's just that they rolled this out so quickly. I mean, when you talk about a program, $350 billion, and just to give you a sense, there were banks nationwide in the first go-round that would batch load up into the SBA system about 5,000 applications at a time.
Wow.
Actually, it was up to 10,000. So that ground the system to a halt. And my poor people are sitting here one at a time trying to upload one application. And sometimes in this second round, it's taken us up to an hour and a half to upload one application.
Wow.
Because the system is so overwhelmed, because this is a big country. You know, we have 330 million people. We have, you know, many of our applicants are actually churches, you know, that applied for the PPP. So we have any number, whether it's you know, a dentist's office, a doctor's office, a law office, an accountant's office, a church, a small restaurant, a small grocery store. But it is small businesses. It was only small business loans. So the bottom line is the way it works. And I think for most of the borrowers of this, they really are anticipating meeting the criteria for total forgiveness, so they won't have to pay it back. If they don't, it's a 2-year loan program. It's only at 1%, and it's all an SBA guaranteed. So we know actually that SBA is guaranteeing these funds. So I haven't put my depositors' dollars at risk because the SBA is guaranteeing it even if they don't pay it. So
was it still Chris, was it still when you get in, when SBA is backing those things, is it still a credit worthiness thing, or is it not?
No.
You meet the requirement. Okay, well that's what made it so much easier and to be able to get the money out to the people who needed it the most, I guess, the quickest, huh?
There was absolutely the only underwriting was we had to get copies of people's payroll so that when they made their loan application, and payroll is payroll. It's not your health insurance. You know, they've changed some of the laws on it as time went on, but they rolled it out so rapidly that there's a lot of things they didn't think about. And as the weeks went on, they made some tweaks to it. But no, there was no credit check on anybody. It was automatic because they wanted to push that money out to the public. They were going to use the community banks, the banking system, to do it. It was the only way to do it. They couldn't really go through a credit underwriting circumstance. They gave us a very brief set of criteria. We ended up doing our compliant promissory note. You know, the loan documents are very brief in this, but a lot of the customers didn't even know what they needed to borrow. You know, they didn't know. We would send them to the website, but the customers were in such emotional and disarray and at such high level of anxiety that they really were relying on us to walk them through the process. And so in the week preceding when we could actually upload applications, we were going full board just trying to educate our customers about the program. And we would get applications that had a question mark. It said loan amount and it had a question mark. Like, I don't know, what am I entitled to? So
how much can I get?
we ended up having to be counselors as well as bankers at the same time, and still are, frankly. But let me say one thing I said on the coronavirus task force Zoom call that we had with Dave Ryan and Mayor Jake and whatnot. The PPP program is one program. the primary vehicle through which all customers should be working right now is to talk directly to your banker, face-to-face, Zoom, call, whatever. Talk to your local banker. They have the ability to accommodate you now with the new pronouncement that came out on March 20th that I was just telling you about, with the FDIC, the OCC, Federal Reserve, all these government regulatory bodies all got together that day and said, look, we're going to have to give the banks some leeway here that we didn't give them back in 2009 and 10, because they've got to work with these customers that without fear that we're going to come down on them hard as bank regulators. So that, not that we can do everything, we can't wave a magic wand and make the whole problem go away, but we can give you a 3-month break. You know, we've got to find out where you stand as a customer, but that's the primary vehicle that customers are going to do to get through this. It's not going to be the PPP or some other program. You've got to, hopefully you have a relationship, and with us being a smaller bank, we know our customers. You know, I know them. I know who you are. I know who your mom is. I know where you work. I know who your friends are. I know where you're going to church. Those are all big things for us when we deal with our customers. We know our customer. And because of that, you know, we're equipped more to be more flexible. One of my fellow bankers who's from China originally said it good to me one time. He said, you know, Chris, you're like a small boat. You can move very quick. He said, my bank is like he works for a big bank. He said, my bank is like big boat, big aircraft carrier. We can't move quick. You can move quick. And so he said it with, I'm not giving a Chinese accent very well there, but it was just, I never forgot him saying that we are very adaptable. You know, and we know our customers. We can serve at a higher level than, nothing against my fellow bankers in the big banking, mega bank industry, but it's a different model. You know, our model is a very different model. It's much more of a customer centric, you know, and we are always focusing on the customer experience at our bank. You guys probably do the same thing at your church. You're focusing on the experience that the people in your congregation have, and trying to make it as meaningful as possible, as spiritually enriching as possible. And, you know, I'm sure this is a part of it. What you're doing right now is a part of it. So we do the same thing. We just do it at a bank.
I think,
but it's still a ministry in a lot of ways.
I think that's a phenomenal. I was very, very encouraged when I discovered that the government was rolling out a lot of these SBA loans through local banks. I think that that's a phenomenal model. I think it is the right model. It still leaves one pending question. If a lot of those loans are going to be forgiven, who pays for that? How does that get paid eventually?
Yeah, actually, the truth of the matter is and the Treasury essentially is printing money. You know, they're really borrowing money. The government is borrowing money. Right now, we're at 2.6 trillion, I think, is really what's been floated. So when you look though at the United States' ability to borrow, the short answer is the taxpayer is going to pay for it. Ultimately, that's the short answer. The little bit more next layer of the onion, though, is that we have the ability to get the money out now and introduce, as you would hear on TV, liquidity into the system. That's what it needs. It needs liquidity into the system so that we don't have a depression era type situation. And because of this, we know that this is a temporary situation. I mean, everybody's got their own, you know, opinions, and we're not scientists on this call. But, you know, even being on the call with other people who know more than I about it and whatnot, locally, we are very lucky. You know, we don't live in a large metropolitan area. We have a lot of public transportation. And that's what I said to my staff when we entered into this whole situation. Let me get back on. I just lost your picture. So let me try one more time here and make sure I get it back. Yeah, I got you back. Sorry about that.
No problem.
That's one of the things working at a bank. I think if we don't touch our screen, it goes blank for security reasons. So I had to get back on so I could see you guys. But really, what happens is, in the big scheme of it, the government is introducing this money on a local level. Like I was saying, we don't have public transportation. So our caseload, if you look at the cases per 100,000 of population, is extremely low. Maybe not as low as Montana and Wyoming, but it's still pretty low. So we entered into this crisis with a lot of strength as a nation and certainly locally. So as long as it doesn't last, you know, too much longer, I think we'll be, you know, will come out of it, you know. And by the way, I've told my staff a lot of good things have come out of it too.
Yeah.
You know, we connect with people we probably haven't connected with as much before. I have 3 children. My daughter is in North Carolina. My 2 sons are local, but we all get on Zoom on a Saturday night and we play Jeopardy, and we have fun for a couple hours together. And you know, that probably wouldn't have happened before this. So you have to look at what you can do. That's what I tell my staff, not what you can't. Yeah. And keep praying, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that brings us up to it. You know, you're doing such a good job as a local bank, and I know you are because I've had experience and I still bank with you guys. And you know, and there's, so like you said, there's some similarities between the local bank and the local church. You know, we're in the people business. You know, what do you think, you know, the faith-based community can do best to help right now during this pandemic?
Well, first of all, support each other. You know, everybody handles this differently. You know, I've always thought, you know, the Lord puts somebody in your life, and you always have to prayerfully consider, why did the Lord put this situation in front of me today? What are you trying to tell me? What's the message? And I'm not a preacher, obviously, so this is a banker lawyer's viewpoint of it. But that's what I tell my staff. You know, how can you help somebody today? You know, and that's the biggest thing, the faith-based. Use your faith to help. You know, recognize somebody that's in need. You know, try to stay optimistic around those who are not. You know, everybody's going to have a different tolerance and a different anxiety level as a result of all this. And some people are going to experience anxieties they've never experienced before. And, you know, if you're just there as a friend to listen, you know, if you can, even within my own neighborhood, we're going on walks together with neighbors that we didn't hardly see before, you know, and just encouraging people who need it, being there for each other. It sounds sort of simple, but isn't that sort of what the Christian value system's all about anyway? It's finding people in need, helping those who need help, you know, giving sometimes when you may not be convenient for you to give or help out, and slow down a little bit, recognize the blessings that you have, you know, encourage others to think about, like my mom's getting ready to turn 80 on May 18th. I'm so sorry we're not gonna be able to have a nice birthday party for her. But I said, Mom, we'll get together face to face, you know, we can hug each other when we're able to, but we just have to be thankful for what we've got. And so when she's discouraged about that, you know, and everybody's got somebody in their life. It may be somebody close to you, or it may be somebody that you work with, or somebody you're in church with, or somebody, you know, frankly, that is not in a very good mood at the grocery store when you go in. Yeah. You know, it's good to thank somebody for what they're doing for you, you know. And I got a biscuit this morning at Hardee's. I said, and, you know, I told him, I said, thank God you guys are here giving me my Hardee's biscuit. Don't tell my wife I'm here, you know, but I want my Hardee's bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit today, and I'm glad you guys are here. Thank you for being here. And you can tell it makes a difference to that person that day. And if you brighten that person's day, it may brighten the next person's day. So
true.
Whether you're in the faith-based community or not, I think that's a good way to approach it, or at least that's what we try to do. And I try, and also the people you influence in your circle. You know, I have nearly 100 employees here. I try to impart that every day to the people I talk to, including my board members. And I think it's a good formula. So yeah, that's my short answer to that.
Well, I think that's, I really appreciate you pointing out the fact that what faith-based communities should be doing is individualistic. And often we have in our church, and I know in every church, people will call and they'll say, Pastor, I just saw this issue and somebody ought to do something about that. And at our church, we call that a sod sat. Somebody ought to do something about that. Well, when you see a sod sat, that's you. You are the solution, because you're the person who saw it. And I love the fact that you brought us back to the reality that it is up to every single individual, not organizations, not businesses. It always comes back to the individual. What will we do individually to make a difference in the lives of the people around us? Thank you for reminding our audience of that. And the reality is that's what it means to be a faith-based community. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and just carving out some of your time to share with us and share with our community and our viewers. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're certainly welcome. So glad to be here. God bless you guys.
God bless you too, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Be safe.